We have our sisters. We have our friends with benefits, our fuck buddies, our tricks, our daddies. I mean, there's so many different ways, thruples. We've introduced new kinds of relationships. Hi, this is Mike Balaban, and welcome to another episode of BAMMER Talks. Today I'd like to share with you a view of the gay male community that was described about 20 years ago in a book that's now a little dated, but it's still very valuable. But before I go into that, I want to also talk about the t-shirt I'm wearing today. As many of you may be aware, the first major studio, big budget, gay rom-com that's frankly sexual with two adult men falling in love is being released today, and it's called Bros, starring Billy Eichner and Luke McFarlane. Billy was the screenwriter along with a straight guy, and Nicholas Stoller, and Judd Apatow, the comedy kingpin, produced the film. It's a $22 million budget. It's opening in more than 3,000 studios across the entire U.S. today, which means not only in big cities, but in small rural areas. And we're going to be on screens everywhere. So aside from the fact that I saw the movie and enjoyed it and found it very believable and funny and heartwarming, you should go see it to support more movies like this being made. I have a little personal connection to it as well. The AIDS Memorial page on Instagram, which features stories of people who died of AIDS submitted by their surviving loved ones. The progenitor of that page, Stuart, is a friend of mine, and he contacted me about a year and a half ago to say the producers of Bros and Billy Eichner were looking to put a scene in the movie about the AIDS Memorial page and the loss of so many people to that disease from our community over the last 40 years. And they wanted to feature a photo, and he thought maybe one of my vintage photos would suffice. And in the end, we selected one. They chose a friend of mine who's very handsome, looking very happy, even though obviously this situation was tragic. And they paid me $250 to sign a release, allowing them to use it. And they went and shot the film, including the scene with that photo in it. But 2 months ago, I got notification that the scene was being cut from the final version, and my photo and the credit would not appear in the movie. Be that as it may, they nicely invited me to a couple of promotional events, gave me some swag, got me a couple of tickets to the advanced screening this Tuesday night where I saw the film and thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, as for today's BAMMER Talk, someone I interviewed for one of my podcast series interviews was David Nimmons, former head of the New York LGBT Community Center in the 90s. And David wrote a book in the early 2000s based on a lot of research he did over several years that looked into the gay male community up closely. And while at the same time describing, frankly, the many ways that we fall short as a community and how we can treat each other badly, by looking down on people that are not as physically attractive as we are, or maybe not as masculine, or etc., that in many other ways, gay men and the gay male community contribute to society in unseen ways that most people don't even think about. So, first off, one thing I bet you're not aware of is the low incidence of violence among congregations of gay men, whether it be in our bars, at our parades, at all the various events. We almost never engage in fistfights. And when things do happen there that have violence, they usually come out of family situations, not out of brawls that came from machismo and showing off and testosterone. Whereas by comparison, straight bars on a Saturday night, every one of them will have a fight or two. And, straight parades, just look at the Irish St. Patrick's Day Parade or the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York. The number of arrests that are associated with those events is, according to the study that David did, something like 10 times as many as in gay bars. We just are more gentle, less violent people. And police prefer to work our parades and our bars than they do straight parades and bars because they know they're going to encounter much less of a chance of violence. The second factor that makes us distinctively different, it's that we have created a community culture of caring. We take careers that have often been assigned to women and looked down upon, and we get involved in them and we make them our own, whether it be nursing or the restaurant service industry or many other examples. We managed to give more money out of our budgets than straight people do. It's been documented. We are more of an altruistic group of people. We learned how to care for each other and support each other during a generational crisis when AIDS invaded and was killing all of us. And lesbians came to our aid as well. So we have this culture of caretaking. Number 3, we have learned how to adopt new forms of relationship and new names associated with our roles in those relationships, and to speak openly about them and to communicate with each other about them. So, for example, whereas if you're straight, you're likely to have a husband, a wife, a brother, a father, a mother, etc., and maybe a good friend. We have our sisters. We have our friends with benefits, our fuck buddies, our tricks, our daddies. I mean, there's so many different ways, thruples. We've introduced new kinds of relationships, polyamorous relationships, open relationships. All of this came from gay men trying out something because we weren't stuck in traditional binary, two-person relationships with kids and the obligations that came with that. But the result is we know how to tell our partners what we like in sex and what we need and what we want. And the result of that communication are healthier relationships, which really have a kind of a tremor effect across society. Number 4, we have a history of treating women more fairly and more equally. Perhaps because we don't see them as romantic partners and targets, we are able to accept them as who they are. And the result is they feel more comfortable around us than they do around most straight men. They'd rather go to a gay bar any day where they won't be ogled and pinched and offended the way they will on a straight bar. And finally, we spend our entire lives essentially searching for bliss. Bliss is a broad term, but whereas many, many more straight men are pressured by their families and peers to going into careers that are practical and will earn them money, or that are perceived as appropriate for a man, as opposed to a nursing career, which no real masculine guy would go into that. Gay men tend to go more with their hearts and seek out careers that we follow our passion in. We tend to find more creative pursuits. We end up being in the arts and in fashion and design and architecture and theater and all kinds of things. And the result of that is many more of us are happy in our lines of work than the straight world at large. And we also hold on to that culture of bliss longer. When you're straight and you enter society and you find a partner and you marry, you're supposed to settle down and buckle down and behave a certain way and raise your kids and be an upstanding member of the community. Gay men don't have those pressures, or historically haven't had them as much. And the result is we feel free to follow our paths, even when it involves, let's say, as a middle-aged man going out to circuit events and dancing. There are different ways we follow our bliss. Some people, kind of derogatorily call it the Peter Pan complex, refusing to grow up until we have to. But there's a certain usefulness that comes out of gay men refusing to act the way they're told to at certain ages. Those are just a few of the distinctions that make us who we are, but contribute to societies in different positive ways. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you for joining us today at another BAMMER Talks. This is Mike Balaban. Thank you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube page and sign up for notifications of future upcoming episodes. You can also be part of the BAMMER community by going to my Instagram page at BAMMER47, to follow me on our podcast episode series, BAMMER and Me, or going to our website, BAMMER.co, with stories submitted by LGBTQ people around the world. Thanks again. See you soon. Bye.